Hello, 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 and welcome to Reasoned Live with me, Darren Grimes. We've got Alex Armstrong, we've got Chloe Dobbs, and we've got Younes Sadaghiani waiting in the wings. We've also got an interview with a man called Jonathan Sagramonti, who is actually one of the foremost I respect him like you wouldn't believe, Jewish journalists, who was at the Oxford Union last week, where, I shit you not, someone said that what happened on October 7th ought to be venerated. That actually, they stood up and said a prescribed terrorist group, a prescribed Islamist terror group, ought to actually be celebrated for what it did on October the 7th. And did the university kick off? Did the union kick off? I'll let you decide that. Watch out for that interview a little bit later on. First of all, though, I want to talk to you about football, but bear with, because it's not me going through the Newcastle United result, whatever that might be tonight, playing Liverpool, God help us. But actually, the fundamental issue of politics within football. So you'll see what I mean actually after I go into some detail in our dispatch. In my dispatch this evening, I want to talk to you about the beautiful game where players are caught between kicking a ball and wading through a minefield of moral posturing enforced by the woke brigade. The latest drama, England and Crystal Palace defender, who was meant to come to Newcastle United, but I'll forgive him for that, Mark Gay, faces reprimand for the apparently outrageous crime of writing, "I love Jesus," across his Pride LGBTQ plus alphabet soup, armband. That's the word I'm looking for. And despite this, there are Muslim players who have outright refused to wear the Pride-themed paraphernalia, and they get a free pass. And if you ask me, the hypocrisy of it is so glaring that it might just rival VAR for ruining football altogether. Let's be clear. This isn't just about football, though, right? This is about the cultural rot, the woke mind virus infecting institutions that once actually represented everybody, the everyman. The FA rules prohibit political, religious, or personal statements on armbands. Yet they've absolutely no issue handing out gear emblazoned with political messaging dictated by the LGBTQ plus advocacy group Stonewall. That's a charity that embroiled in scandal over the pushing of gender ideology onto kids. That's not political, apparently, though. That's inclusion. Well, how very convenient. Will it be inclusion when you've been responsible for pushing a charity that's involved in the mutilation of children who later regret their decisions and realise that in some cases they were just gay all along, but have been pushed to medically transition in order to actually try and be inclusive and diverse and accepting? I mean, think about this for longer than 2 seconds, and you'll conclude something very different. But Mark Gay, the son of a church minister, he didn't refuse to wear the armband. He complied, but he dared to balance the narrative by scribbling his personal faith onto it. Now, it's a quiet gesture of personal belief. Yet instead of celebrating this as the inclusivity that they claim to champion, the FA is cracking down. And meanwhile, Ipswich Town's captain, Sam Morsey, a devout Muslim, refused the armband outright, and guess what? He faced no repercussion. I bet you guessed that. I bet that came out of your mouth before it came out of mine. You know the game by now, my friends. And why is that then? Because the FA is so terrified of being labelled Islamophobic. It's easy to bully Christians in a country whose cultural backbone has spinelessly eroded faster than Archbishop of Canterbury Justin Welby's. Gay's father nailed it. This is a Christian country, he said. Or at least it was. You know, they still sing God Save the King at football matches. Royal buildings still display Latin. And yet expressing Christian beliefs is treated as punishable offence. The Football Association is fine with religious references when they serve as a harmless relic of tradition. But heaven forbid a player actually live out that faith. The double standard reeks of cowardice. The FA know that disciplining a Muslim player would trigger an avalanche of backlash, perhaps even more than just verbal. So they turn on the easier target. The Christian players, who by and large won't riot, they won't march in the streets, they won't threaten violence. It's the institutional equivalent of a schoolyard bully picking on the kid who won't fight back. And let's talk about the Stonewall saga a little bit further for a second. The FA parrot this group's agenda as though it were gospel, but Stonewall's track record include pushing that ideology into schools, into workplaces, dismissing legitimate concerns about the medicalisation of children, and promoting divisive identity politics. This is the organisation dictating the moral priorities of English football. Spare me the sanctimony, sod off. The irony is that football is meant to be our unifying national sport. It's a common ground where background, belief, opinion, they're all left at the turnstile. Instead, it's been hijacked as a platform for ideological point scoring. The FA's Pride campaign alienates as much as it includes. Players like Gay, who simply wish to live their faith, are demonised because he's not a Muslim. Fans, many of whom share those beliefs, are left feeling disenfranchised. The mantra of diversity rings hollow when only certain perspectives are actually welcomed. And the solution here is to take a leaf out of Wembley's book. I actually criticised them for this decision. When the October 7th attack happened, the Wembley Arena refused to light it up in the colours of the flag to stand in solidarity with them. They did it for Ukraine, but they didn't do it for Israel. They said it would be too contentious. Again, guess why? For the Muslim reason. But when it comes to actually putting politics into football, I'm wondering if maybe Wembley suggested the answer. If they were the guiding light, no pun intended, of where the sport should actually go. Because maybe they corrected the course. They proved that even the mightiest institutions can admit that they got it wrong and take steps to fix it and shrug their shoulders. They said they're not going to do it anymore. They're not going to light up in any nation's colours. So we ought to say that if you can't have any religion show their faith, or certain religions to show their faith, no religion should be able to show their faith. If armbands have to remain apolitical, then stop shoving Stonewall's agenda onto the pitch. Because football ultimately is meant to be for everyone. That's what they say. So it's about time the FA approved that, or F off instead. Well, that's my view. We'll find out what the panel's view is imminently. But let me know what you think in the comments, because I actually think Wembley, now that I think about it, is very, very instructive of what football ought to do, of what actually ought to happen to depoliticise the game. If it's not acceptable for Muslims, then it shouldn't be acceptable for Christians. And if it's not acceptable for Israel, it shouldn't be acceptable for Palestine or Ukraine. It's really that simple. And get the trans stuff out of football. Because I wouldn't want my kids going to a football match looking at people that they respect and admire actually flying the flag of the progressive butchers. And that's what I deem them to be. I really, really do. Okay. Let's see then what my panel make of this. As ever, I'm joined by Younes, Alex, Chloe, and, well, in the grotto. Cooey, cooey, cooey. Hello.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Chloe,
How we
you've just
doing?
uploaded a video and totally shot my. I wanted to talk about that, but we'll have to talk about it and then you'll watch Chloe's take on it afterwards. But on the hotel
I was just
stuff.
practicing, Darren.
Yeah. Alex, you've been tweeting about this. I mean, the Wembley example. Do you think actually it's just time to let's get politics out of football altogether?
Yes, it's such a simple answer, and I know almost every single 99.9% of football fans will agree that it is completely unnecessary to have any political ideology, party affiliation, charity affiliation in football whatsoever. It just is completely unnecessary. Football, as you said, Darren, is a game for everybody. You don't need to be swinging pride flags around. I think, if anything, this outwardly ridiculous Stonewall agenda is going to put players off. Players that probably do, well, maybe potentially do want to come out as gay. They're just putting them off. They're just turning them off altogether. They're going, oh my God, I don't want to be associated with these people. And I'm really, really proud of Mark Gahey for writing what he did on that band. He not only did he wear the band, by the way, he just put his religious inscription on it, as opposed to the Muslim player who refused to wear it altogether, who got
Well,
nothing
several
from the
now.
FA. Mad.
Several, and even to the extent where Younes, Man United, have said that they're not going to wear. And by the way, these jackets are absolutely god awful. That my mother has epilepsy, and I'll tell you, I wouldn't want her looking at these jackets for too long because she might have an epileptic fit.
You wouldn't have thought a gay man actually made them, Darren, would
Well,
you?
no, you wouldn't. You really wouldn't. You also wouldn't think that the Adidas deal was worth 900 million quid with Man United. You know, that's an extraordinary sum of money. But anyway, these jackets are not going to go ahead, Younes, but it's because Muslim players have kicked off over it. Do you see where I'm going with that and recognise that actually the FA, the Football Association, they've got different rules for different religions, effectively?
Yes, they do, and we have to keep politics out of sports. You know, we discussed this a few weeks ago, and I had a video flagged about this. I think I spoke about this on the group chat where we discussed this German football player that didn't want to win, didn't want to wear the LGBTQ armband, and he was fined something by the German FA, and then for some reason that was flagged on my Instagram as debated issues, and then they gave me a strike for it, and I was like, after all the stuff we spoke about that video, like, I don't understand. Well, anyway, so regarding the FA, we need to keep politics out of sport. We need to get rid of this virtue signaling woke mind virus infiltrating and then forcing people to wear something they don't want to wear. I thought it was all about acceptance and it was all about, everyone should be included. But then what you're actually doing, you're actually marginalizing people that are not LGBTQ, or maybe they don't agree with the whole LGBTQ narrative, because I don't. It's not that I have anything against gay or lesbian people, but I don't think there are 100 different genders, and the same thing happened with the Black Lives Matter movement, where everyone was kneeling before a game, and then Wilfred Zaha, a black player, was like, no, I'm not doing that. That's ridiculous. But if a white player or a player that wasn't black stood up and said, I'm not doing that, they would have called him a racist straight away. And I think the problem is here, if a white Christian player doesn't wear the armband, he's a homophobe. But, if a Muslim player doesn't want to wear it, well, it goes against his religion, so it's okay. So again, there's double standards. The only way we need to get rid of this is to keep politics and sport separate. Football and sports need to be as apolitical as possible.
And why does Wembley Arena even need to light up more times than my lights in this flat, just for every world disaster that takes place? The Israel question really did, I think, show their rank hypocrisy over this particular issue, over their politics. Chloe, you're vehemently homophobic. I was wondering what you thought about this.
Don't think I am. Thanks for just
she gave bashes Alex all the time.
Do I?
In that GB News studio, he's
I don't know where these accusations are coming from.
He's called me far worse, Chloe, in front of
fake news.
In front of doctors and everything.
No, Chloe, what do you make of this? Because are you interested in football?
I'm not interested in football, but I'm a sporty person interested in other sports. And for me, that's my place where I can tune
Mm,
out of politics. And
Mm.
you're just focusing on the competition, whatever sport it is you're doing. Like politics really should not need to be involved. Now, people who are involved in sport and people who are high up, well-known players, they can have political views, right? They're not banned from having political views if they want to tweet about them and use the voice that they have, right? They shouldn't. It's not like they should be banned from doing so, right? But kind of a official kit and all this sort of forcing, or at least putting a lot of pressure on players to do certain virtue signaling acts, I think is just not the right place. And I think it's just like every single organization, institution, whatever it is, business now, just one by one, they all get consumed
yeah.
by this wokeness where suddenly it all becomes political and it all becomes about trans. And I just had enough of it. And I feel so sorry for the athletes that get caught up in this, that they just want to do their sport. They just want to train. Most of them don't care about any of this stuff. They're just completely focused on their sporting goals.
Even if
And
they're
they get
gay
wrapped up in
themselves.
yeah, and they get wrapped up in all of this, and then they have to have the stress of thinking, "Oh gosh, am I going to have my sponsors pull me if I don't go
Yeah.
along with this stuff?" And I get into a controversy, and then I won't have the funding that I need to be able to make training for my sport my full-time job. It's very stressful for the athletes. And I feel really sorry for them. And at the Olympics, I mean, what a shit show that was. I mean, what an embarrassment. That opening
Yeah.
ceremony, just
Mm.
absolutely ridiculous. There was also a surfer in the Olympics, so he got in trouble because he had Jesus on his surfboard. But I imagine if it was any kind of pictography from another religion or a trans flag across his board, that there would have been no problem whatsoever. It's clearly double standards. I've had enough of this crap, to be honest.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Paul asks, why is Chloe the only one in the Christmas spirit? I haven't
Well,
even.
thank you, Paul. I told the group chat, Paul, that Christmas hats are mandatory, but nobody got the message. Everyone else
No,
is
no,
not in
come
the
on.
Christmas spirit.
Christmas doesn't start 2 days before for me. That's it. I'm a
It
Grinch.
no,
I
it's
haven't even
come
put up my
1st of
tree.
December. It's Christmas now.
I haven't.
Yeah.
Have you put up your
Yeah.
tree?
No, I tried to buy a tree. I saw the one that I wanted, and then I went back the next day to Robert Dyer's to pick it up, and then they had all sold out. So I need to go on another hunt.
Oh dear. All right. Well,
But
that's
I'm gonna
all.
have to get a fake one because I don't have the
I'm
time
gonna
for
go and chop
even
one
a real
down just to
one.
piss off Greta Thunberg, I think. That would really piss off the lefties. That's a great exercise. Chopping down my Christmas tree for 30 days.
I might go do it in Checkers just to piss off
Yeah.
Sakir Starmer. To steal a tree from there. Right. The other, you mentioned sport then, you mentioned the World Cup. And actually Qatar were in town, as in the leader of Qatar was in the United Kingdom. And Younes sent me this, and I thought it was very interesting. Because that's another reason why sport is totally hypocritical, right? All of these
Yeah.
regimes and all these other things that don't preach human rights and all that, don't even have human rights, but they're still totally fine because, money, money, money. But this says, King Charles hosted the Emir of Qatar for dinner last night, which took place in Buckingham Palace. And he quoted the Quran while praising the Islamist State for its work on peace. Now, this is an organization which has shielded, abetted, aided the Hamas regime in Gaza and probably knows where the hostages are. There are a million ways in which Qatar is totally complicit. And it's this woman here, Naz Hashem, who Younes will tell me who she is. But Qatar is a leading financial supporter of organizations and individuals linked to Hamas, including through funding initiatives at some Western universities. Now, Younes, this just calls into question the rampant way in which that there is a bending of the knee to these institutions, to these regimes, rather, despite the fact, we've just been bleating on about pride bandages.
Yeah.
and the football's implication and hoo-ha about them. And despite that, they were happy to get into bed with Qatar, and now the bloody royal family are happy to get into bed with Qatar.
Yeah, so this is ironic on 100 different levels. So let me explain. First of all, during the Qatar World Cup 2 years ago, the Qatari government banned the LGBTQ flag and the LGBT armband, and they were like, players were not allowed to wear it. And FIFA didn't say anything. It's funny because, gay rights happened in Western Europe. Gays already have rights in Western Europe, but they don't have a right to Qatar. So the supposed countries that you need to aim in order for you to further your goal of, gay rights, you don't dare do that in those countries. So you can only virtue signal in Western countries where gays and lesbians already have rights. They can get married, they can even adopt children, but you will never do it in countries like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, because they won't allow you. And that's the place you need to be aiming if you truly care about gay and lesbian rights. But you don't care about gay and lesbian rights. It's all part of control, and it's all part of virtue signaling. The second part about this is that I've done it like a whole video series on, the Qatari families with Visegrad, where I was, shooting these videos. And the Al Thani family is basically one of the ones that is funding, not only just hosting, but funding Hamas through the Islamic Republic. Ismail Haniyeh was staying in a 5-star hotel in Qatar during that time. And they are one of the reasons. And Saudi Arabia, so Qataris are very close with the Islamic Republic, let's put it that way. Saudi Arabia and Mohammed bin Salman hate the Qataris because they see them as betrayers. And the fact that your royal family would invite them, it just sets a bad precedent. However, after Trump was elected, Qatar said to the Hamas leadership, you can't stay here anymore. So it just shows you all of a sudden that Trump is elected, they're scared. So they're kicking him out the country. But also, I was going to say something else, but I forgot it. But I was going to make a good point. It's going to get back to me. But in terms of Nas Hashim, she's a friend of mine. She's a Persian Jew. She lives in America. So she always tags me in these things. So I just shared it with you. When it comes back to me, I'll let you know.
It's a good point.
Yeah.
Wild in the Woods said Syria held the wrestling a few months back. Look what happened there. I wouldn't like to be there for that.
Oh, sorry. This is what I was going to say. By the way, so Qatar, one of the reasons they invited the Qataris is that, the Qatari royal family, they have more properties in London than the royal family themselves. Did you know that?
Wow. No, I didn't
The
know that.
Qataris have more property in London than the royal family. Okay.
God.
And they invest in clubs like Manchester City and PSG. So the thing with Qatar is on the one side, they try to pretend to be all Western and all forward thinking. They're buying all these football clubs, but at the same time, they support terrorists like Hamas. So you can't really trust them because they're playing both sides. They're playing the Islamic Republic, but they're also trying to come across Western. So I think you should take them with a pinch of salt and you should be wary of them. However, the current signs are that they are trying to move more towards the Americans because they told Hamas to basically F off.
Yeah, well, I mean, effectively, but let's see how that plays out. The proof of the pudding is very much in the eating, and there are. Let's not forget that in the House of Commons today, during Prime Minister's questions, there was a British-Israeli woman whose daughter is still a British woman who's still missing, held hostage by Hamas. If Qatar had any influence whatsoever over Hamas, why have they not influenced them in actually bringing about the release of that British hostage, whilst we're hosting them a 5-course meal at Buckingham bloody Palace?
Well, we know why.
They probably also knew about 7th of October as well. They probably knew about it, the 7th of October. They didn't tell anyone. So, yeah.
We know why. We know why the royal family have been asked to cozy up to the Qataris, and it's because of this new deal that the Starmer government is striking with them at this very moment in time. And that I have to say, the royals do their job. They're not here to be political. They're here to do their job, and their job is to drum up business and be diplomats for our country. So I don't hold them in contempt of this, and that is unfortunately their duty, and that's what they've got to do. I'm sure many of them probably wouldn't want to be in the same room as the Qataris, but they are forced to be there. I do say it's a damning indictment on Keir Starmer's judgment yet again. The man who refuses to, who signed the Commonwealth piece of paper on slavery, has got Qatar. I think you wrote this earlier on Twitter, actually, Darren. The guy who's literally saying we should apologize and give reparations for slavery is invited the Qataris over here who use slaves to this very day. I mean, it's an indictment on our country, if nothing less, that we want them for their money. That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, what does that make our country?
Because, sticking with the football theme, and I'm not deliberately talking about football a lot. It just happens that they're all connected. But the 2 years ago during the World Cup, he didn't go, as in Sir Keir Starmer didn't go because of human rights abuses by the Qataris. So, I mean, what's changed now other than, he's actually realised in the real world you have to be a grown-up. And you can't have student union politics in life. And the Emir, actually, I didn't know this, but I was watching coverage of the royal procession. It was at Horse Guards, and he actually went to Sandhurst, the Emir. He was trained at Sandhurst. So he has links to this country, stretching back quite some time. They clearly love this country. But it does call into question, Chloe, Sir Keir Starmer's rank hypocrisy.
I mean, the hypocrisy of this Labour government is just completely off the scale at this point. It gets worse and worse. Every single day there's a new story of something where they slam the Tories for it and then have done it themselves when they are in office. Another perfect case of it here with the Qataris. It's all well and good when you're on the opposition benches to say, oh, how dare you do deals with those evil Qataris that don't care about human rights. As soon as he's in power, he sees, oh, we need to grow the economy. Oh, it's quite convenient to do deals with these guys. Obviously, they are desperate for cash. Rachel Reeves doesn't know what the hell to do to fill up the government coffers. And so now that they are in that desperate state, they are willing to do anything to grow the economy.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Right. I want to get on to our big interview and then have you respond off the back of it. And then we've got a couple more topics. So coming up, we've got the hotel saga, one of these videos from outside a hotel, which is an actual castle-like building. It's you could not make it up. And then it's some GB News has overtaken Sky in the latest viewing figures. And that was written by The Guardian, which I took great delight in. Clive Lewis has gone on a protest saying that we need to be nicer to refugees and asylum seekers. Has he taken one in himself? Has he feck? And Sabrina Carpenter, who was a pop star, apparently is dressing a little bit too sultry, and it's question marks around it as to whether or not it's perversion actually pushing things to children, but equally also dressing quite childlike. And what are the red lines that ought to be drawn about being quite evocative of prepubescence at the same time as being quote unquote sexy? And I thought that was a very interesting conversation to be had that I've seen popping up and down on the internet. But the big interview tonight, I don't know if viewers might have seen this, or indeed panelists might have seen this, but the Oxford Union had a debate on Israel, and William Hague has just been made Chancellor of the Oxford University, and an open letter has been written to the Chancellor calling out a failure on all counts to protect Jewish students from antisemitism during this apartheid state motion. So the motion was very pointed, and it said that Israel is guilty of genocide and is an apartheid state. And it had very learned people, like Natasha there is on the left, and then on the right is Jonathan, who was the journalist that I spoke to earlier today. And then the one next to Jonathan is the son of a co-founder of Hamas, who Younes is going to remind me of the name of.
Mossab Hassan Youssef.
Thank you. And then the man next to him, Younes, is...
I can't see. Wait, I don't know.
I don't know either, but I will remind
the guy to his left or to his right?
To his not Jonathan, the other Arab guy.
So the guy is something is also, I know, is something Youssef as well. Haddad Youssef. Haddad.
Yes, that's it. That's
Haddad.
it.
Youssef Haddad. Yeah.
And he is an Israeli Arab. He was
yeah.
brought up in Israel, despite it being an apartheid state.
Married to this woman called Emily. She's been on Piers Morgan a few times, I think. Yeah.
Oh, Emily Carver, she does get around. I'm joking. She'll kill me for saying that. Right, okay, let's get into the hot seat then. She is indeed, with to this man. No, Jonathan Sagradoti, who is a Jewish journalist in London who was part of this Oxford Union debate in which was filled, packed to the rafters with pro-Palestine protesters. And even when Hamas and October 7th was venerated and celebrated, they didn't kick them out until it was demanded that they were kicked out by one of the speakers. Now, to me, that's appalling because they are a prescribed terrorist organisation. So I think they probably have fallen foul of the law. But this is our conversation, and then I'll come back to the panel and have you and the audience respond to what was said. My friends, and a very warm welcome to our hot seat segment where, of course, no topic is too hot to handle. And indeed, this one is, well, it got pretty hot. It got pretty intense indeed. Hot with bigotry, I would argue. We need to talk about the Oxford Union. It's an institution once revered, of course, as the beating heart of free debate, but now seemingly actually reduced to a stage for mob rule. Jonathan Sagardoti, a journalist and a son, by the way, of a Holocaust survivor, was invited to oppose a motion that said Israel is an apartheid state responsible for genocide. And what he encountered was, well, now but a debate, a sham trial. It was no debate at all, where hostility actually reigned supreme, and even vile rhetoric. And I'm sure you'll agree with me that this is vile rhetoric. Calling the October 7th Hamas attacks, in which men, women, children slaughtered indiscriminately, rapes, beheadings, they called them heroism, acts of heroism. And that was tolerated within the Oxford Union debating chamber. And Jewish students were actually intimidated and pro-Israel speakers heckled. Now, the union seems to have become a playground for the worst kind of bigotry. And let's not forget that Labour scrapped protections for free speech at universities, proof, if any, were needed of how essential they actually were to begin with. Now, Jonathan's going to join me now to unpack this debacle and what it says about the state of free speech in Britain. But just have a check out. This is Jonathan in action there at the union, to give you a flavour of the intensity of Jonathan's debate, and no doubt his fervour to actually be heard by the mob. And then, well, a little cheeky T-shirt there showing off some of the beloved terrorists who have been killed by the IDF over the course of the last year. Good for them, I say. Well, Jonathan's with me now. Jonathan, thank you very much for your company.
Good to be with you, Darren.
Now, Jonathan, you described the Oxford Union as a chamber of horrors. Now, was this a debate, in your opinion, or was it just mob rule dressed up in a fancy black tie?
Well, you can see there that the Oxford Union has this tradition that the speakers dress in black tie, and it all looks very fancy and pretentious. And yet it was really the opposite of fancy or pretentious. It was just disrespectful, shameful, offensive, and not just to the speakers, but to actually the principles of fair debate and honest investigation into topics of interest. That's what it's meant to be about. It's meant to be about debating different sides of important topics and arguments. But really, I think that our experience, and I speak probably for all four speakers on my team, was that this was not honest. It wasn't arranged to be honest. It wasn't arranged to be fair. It was arranged to be an assault on us. We were four people with, between us, levels of expertise and experience that were directly relevant and applicable to the question we were being asked. And that very question itself was phrased as offensively and unfairly as possible, that Israel is an apartheid state guilty of genocide, not just one, but two of these common slanders being put into one motion. They could have used a motion that was slightly more balanced or fair to debate what's going on in Israel at the moment. But no, it was as aggressive as it could be. They invited on the other side speakers who were designed to be aggressive and offensive. Originally, they invited Norman Finkelstein. He pulled out at the last minute. I think he was scared of our team in the end. But they really filled the room as well with such aggressive people.
Oh, yeah. It looked like the Middle East. You know, I sort of thought it was in an Arab country, a debating chamber in an Arab country.
Well, you know, it's interesting you say that, because we had two speakers in the end who joined us, and they were, interestingly, both Arabs. So on the proposition side, that is to say the anti-Israel side, they had two Jews originally on the lineup, a guy called Miko Peled, who's a very aggressive anti-Israel campaigner, and Norman Finkelstein, who many will know from appearances on things like Piers Morgan's show.
Yeah.
And both of them very aggressive, but they are, of course, Jewish anti-Israel campaigners. So when we managed to put together the amazing team that I think we did by including Yosef Haddad, who is an Israeli Arab, and Mossab Hassan Youssef, who is the son of a senior Hamas founder and Hamas leader, who then, in prison in Israel, decided to inform on Hamas to Israel so that he prevented countless suicide bombings and saved so many people's lives. And he's been, over the last 14 months, a very passionate advocate for Israel's case in the world media. I think it really scared them that they thought they'd done something clever by getting these two anti-Israel Jews involved. And in fact, we had these two Arabs involved, not as tokens, in fact, but on the contrary, Yosef Haddad proves the lie of the apartheid slur, because he is a successful Arab who comes to talk about his direct experience having grown up in Haifa, one of the most multicultural, coexistence-based cities in Israel, and also Mossab, who I said, you know, has been both on the Palestinian side in the heart of Hamas and on the Israeli side saving lives. So I don't think they could have had two better speakers really on that topic, but they weren't very keen on them.
I agree. And I've heard them both speak before, and they're phenomenal speakers. But one speaker on the opposition, well, rather opposed to your argument, argued that the October 7th atrocity, the worst day in Israel's history, as an act of heroism. Now, let's call that what it is, Jonathan, right? This is glorifying terrorism, right? How on
that's right.
earth
Yeah,
was that allowed?
That was Miko Peled, who I mentioned a moment ago. He said that what Israel is doing is terrorism, and what Hamas did on October the 7th, he said the actions of October the 7th were heroism. I did actually stand up to make a point of order to the chair, the president of the Oxford Union, and say this is, as far as I can tell, against the Terrorism Act 2000. It's showing explicit support and praise for the actions of a terror group that's prescribed here in the UK and around the world, Hamas. The president, who is really responsible for conducting this whole sham, this whole circus of hatred, he actually said, oh, well, I'm not here to enforce the law. So I suggested he invite in one of the police officers from outside, because there were police there. He's that guy you can see sitting behind me in white tie, but don't be fooled by the polite clothing. He just didn't do anything about it, and Peled said, arrest me. That was his response to it. And as well, it's worth mentioning as well that Mossab, in his speech, after he'd explained to the people in the room that he had actually risked his own life and at great jeopardy to himself, informed on Hamas to save lives when he was a double agent, he asked how many people in that room, by a show of hands, would have informed on, if they'd had information about October the 7th before it happened, if they would have given it to the authorities. Very, very few people put up their hands. I may have put up both hands. I can't remember now. But he asked them that, and I think it was a really smart question, because he showed that they were effectively supporting terrorism.
It's just grotesque.
The president of the Oxford Union, who himself is an Egyptian Arab, and he's made a lot of being the first Arab president, didn't manage to get a good blend of people in that room to make it a place of honest debate. Instead, he filled it with very aggressive people. There was a lot of Arabic shouted at us, and the two Arab speakers I mentioned on our side actually commented as we went in variously that it gave them trauma flashbacks to Ramallah, literally, and also Yosef Haddad, when he stood up and played out a recording to the room of one of the Palestinian terrorists who did attack on the 7th of October. He called his mum. There's a recording of this phone call. You may have heard it. He calls his mum and he says, "Mum, I've killed 10 Jews with my own hands." He's full of pride. He played that out to the room. And he said, it's in Arabic, but I probably don't need to translate it for most of you. It was a joke, but actually this room was not filled with your typical Oxford students. That's not to say Arabic speakers can't be Oxford students, but it is to say that there was a very particular mixture of people in there. And
I imagine I speak for many people when I say that actually since October 7th, I have a kinship with Jews in Britain in a way in which I've never felt before, because I feel frightened for what's taking place in my country on their behalf, but also wider than that, in general, just what's taking place in our country. I never thought we'd be a country in which calls for genocide happen on a weekly basis in our capital city. You know, that would have been unthinkable to me even 10 years ago, never mind. Perhaps I've just not been as alive to it, awake, as they call it, as I should have been.
I would say on that, thank you, firstly, because it is really important that people have that sense and have come to that realization. As you say, maybe you woke up to it late, maybe not. It certainly got worse. And I think that October the 7th was brutal and horrible in what happened, but it was also brutal and horrible in the reaction. And that's what I think you're talking about there, which is the reaction here, that there could be students on campus, or there could be people in the street, or our neighbours, or people marching through the streets of London and elsewhere in this country, praising what those barbarians did. People shouting in favour of the ideology that carried out that massacre, and condemning the army of the country that is doing everything it can to root out that evil without collateral damage. Of course, there's always collateral damage in war, but without as much of it as possible. I think that was a rude awakening for many people. Some of us have been a bit obsessed with these sorts of things for years, and others have just woken up to it. That's not important. It's not a game of I told you so. It's simply a matter of us all coming to that realization and sticking up for each other. And it's not just about Jews. That's exactly the point. It's the same ideology that blew up Manchester Arena. It's the same ideology that stabs people outside Parliament. It's the same ideology that puts a death threat on the Batley school teacher. It's the same ideology that cuts throats as ISIS. This is a form of fundamentalist Islam that is threatening not just Jewish people in Israel, not just through bodies like Hamas or the Muslim Brotherhood, which it's a chapter of, but also here in the UK. It's Iranian overreach into all these countries around the world, orchestrating and carrying out attacks and threats on people who've got nothing to do with Israel and Jews. You know, we've heard the authorities here say that over 15 people in recent years have had over 15 plots against people on British soil have been foiled by the intelligence services to kill people by those either working for or directly from Iran, from the Islamic Republic of Iran. That is to say, the tyranny that currently is even occupying and holding Iranians to ransom. So I think it's really important that people have come together since October the 7th. There have been countless groups, actually, of non-Jewish people who've been very outspoken, and it's much appreciated, and your support as well, and the support of channels like GB News, and also, if I'm allowed to say it, Talk TV and others, because it's really weird for many of us that these issues are seen as issues of the right. They're not. And so far, it is mostly the right who are open to talking about it, supporting us, coming together and helping us. But it shouldn't be. The left, the Labour Party, our current government, they should all be just as against rape of women, kidnapping of children, Holocaust survivors, civilians, of bludgeoning people to death. They should be against all of that. There's nothing right-wing about standing up for the basic freedoms that we hold dear in this country and defending them against, extremist, theocratic ideologies that wish to kill all of us. That's not a right-wing belief.
That's so part of my interview with Jonathan. I'll put out the full thing tomorrow because I think he's a really incredible mind to talk to, but also really quite, I think, and I would argue, it goes wider than just the Israel question. You know, someone in the comments there said that, you know, when will we learn not to, foreign fights have nothing to do with us? The wider question about the problem with Islam in Britain, I think, is a problem that very much does apply to us. And that the sort of simultaneous fight that the Jews have, I think, isn't isolated to Israel. I think we've got it in this country too. And the sooner we wake up to that, the absolute better. I'm sure you all agree with me on that one. Anyway, let's go get some reaction in the grotto. I don't know why I was so low there all of a sudden. I looked like I was on the floor. Anyway, Chloe, Younes, I must start with you because there were a lot of issues there to unpack.
Sure.
But are you surprised that this happened at the Oxford Union?
No, not at all. And the first video of mine that actually went viral was like in January, and it was like a bunch of Islamists in the streets asking for Sharia in the UK. And I was thinking, like, this is so unbelievably preposterous, and the fact that it's even allowed and the fact that no one's questioning it. And I got really angry, and in one take I recorded something, and then the thing just completely blew up on social media. And look, this is a problem that's been brewing for the last 20 years, I would say. And now it's reached the climax. And it's the unholy marriage of wokeism and Islamism, to the point that the woke culture is giving a platform to the Islamists to grow, to, you know, spread their utterances. And unfortunately, we are fighting evil, and we are in the minority. I would say only like 5% of the people know exactly what's happening. 95% of people are pro-Palestine, and they think that the Zionists are the problem, and the Zionists are the ones that want to take over the world, and they're the aggressors, and so on and so forth. But in reality, it's the Islamists, and it's only a matter of time before the Islamists take over, and they take all your rights away, and take your freedoms away, and subjugate women, and behead anyone. The same thing that happened to my country. So we have to fight this. We have to fight fire with fire, and we shouldn't be scared. The fact that we have so many so-called Oxford students that are supposed to be the smartest, brightest people, also the Ivy League in Harvard, the encampments outside Harvard and Yale and all these universities, and you look at it and you're like, you are not bright at all. You're actually very stupid. The fact that you can't see what's happening right now is beyond, or maybe it's the fact that people or the mainstream media don't speak about it. They don't explain. And maybe it takes people like me, like Mossab Hassan Youssef and Yusuf Haddad, that actually grew up in that environment, to come out and call out this bullshit. Because this will take the Western society down sooner rather than later. So we have to stand up to it.
I mean, Chloe, the same question to you then, for different reasons, obviously. But that question of, are you surprised to see this happen at the Oxford Union?
No, but possibly for slightly different reasons that you guys and the person, Jonathan, that you interviewed may have suggested. I want to add a bit of context, because obviously the people who are looking at these articles and seeing what's happened with debate, they aren't in Oxford. They don't completely understand how the Oxford Union operates and what is going on here. Admittedly, I have not had the time to sit down and watch this debate through. It sounds like it got pretty out of hand, and you had people shouting where they should have been politely making their arguments. But so first of all, the Oxford Union is not a left-wing institution. The Oxford Student Union, which is a very, very different entity, is a very woke institution, and you have seen them putting pressure on the Oxford Union, as they did with the Kathleen Stock event, which the Oxford Union really, really fought to make happen. They were trying to remove their funding and all sorts of whatnot. Generally, the people who run the Oxford Union, they're not all on the right, but there are a lot of people running the Oxford Union who are part of ALCA, Oxford University Conservative Association. I don't know the current president. I left about a year ago, so I don't know exactly what they are like. But I highly, highly doubt that this motion going ahead is to do with the fact that the Oxford Union has become woke. They are very, very committed to free speech. They put on people from the left and the right. As you said, they fought tooth and nail to make that Kathleen Stock event go ahead, despite everyone trying to tear them down for it. I don't agree with this accusation from Jonathan that they will have packed the room with people who are pro-Palestine. I think that is simply reflective of the fact that students in general across this university and others are becoming very, very pro-Palestine and, dangerously pro-terrorist. That's what we should be concerned about, as opposed to the Oxford Union's leadership. So if you want to attend an Oxford Union debate, you stand and you queue up, and it is first come, first serve. It's not a case of them choosing who is in the audience. It just so happens that those people turned up. Now, the day that this debate happened is the same day that the Oxford University Conservative Association election would have been happening. So the students who are on the right and are likely to be part of ALCA, the Conservative Association, who are probably the more pro-Israel students, they would have been busy with their election. Also at the Oxford Union, in terms of failures of leadership there, potentially in controlling the room, making sure this event was managed properly, they have their huge election the day after this debate happened. So they probably just, left basically the interns to run the show, whilst the people at the top were running around like headless chickens, worrying about their election the next day. So I think that's important context. I think that the Oxford Union, it needs to be a place where you have as much free speech as possible and you don't shut down debates that are contentious. I think that this debate should have gone ahead. As your speaker said, maybe they could have rephrased the motion for sure to make it sound a little bit more balanced. I think also another thing to bear in mind in terms of how they control the room, the security guards there, they are quite scared to jump in and say take someone out of the room, because they had a big scandal where the security guard took someone out of the room that was a black individual, and it was all over the national press, and it was seen as sort of painted as a sort of racist attack. And so they know that if they were to take one of those pro-Palestine people shouting out of the room, that all of the left-wing student journos would have been absolutely all over them for it. The security guards would have been worried about losing their jobs. So I just think that the blame here, sure, the Oxford Union may have made some mistakes, but this is not a case of the Oxford Union being woke. This is a problem of students being woke and just becoming completely obsessed with their bowing down to terrorists, essentially, not at Oxford, but a general trend across young people all over the country. That is the thing that we need to be concerned about.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, well put, Chloe. I was actually genuinely learning something there.
Yeah.
Alex, the issue around, with everything that Chloe has just said, is there something to what Jonathan had to say about this guy, the president of the Oxford Union, making clear his identity, as in he keeps saying that he's the first Egyptian Arab to be president of the Oxford Union? Do you think actually this is what this is all about? It's just identity politics?
Well, everything student politics level these days seems to be identity politics driven, because a lot of these young people haven't got any merit. That's the reality. They don't have any merit of their own. They haven't got a career. They haven't got anywhere in their political lives. And so they make their entire identity what people can see, and their sexuality in some cases, and now their gender, of course, as well. So it's just gender identity politics being played at its maximum, because people without merit only can refer to things that they sometimes use as some sort of form of credibility on a matter. And as you guys all know, you don't need to be black to talk about issues affecting race. You don't need to be gay to talk about issues affecting sexuality, and you don't need to be one gender or the other to talk about issues affecting gender identity. You can be any of those things and still be just as qualified as somebody who is one of those things. So I think, again, I don't take anything that happens in student unions anywhere in the country too seriously. Obviously, Oxford has a reputation to uphold because it's Oxford University, but I put as, like, with all due respect, I know, Chloe, you've been there, and I don't want to take away from any of the merit, but I think there's plenty of smart people who will go, look, it's a student union debate. It's a glorified student union debate, and yes, they get some fantastic speakers, but you just got to take it for what it is. A bunch of kids in a room screaming and shouting, trying to be the most glorified identity politics person of the day.
But can you imagine what kind of moral superiority you must feel you have in order to, as you say, to be a student who looks at the son of a co-founder of Hamas, someone who was a spy for the Israelis after defecting to the Jews in Israel. And you look at someone like that and you think you know more about what Hamas and the so-called Palestinian resistance are actually all about than someone like that who has lived and breathed it and
Yeah.
had threats to his life and all the rest of it. Can you imagine being that much of a self-indulgent wanker that you actually think you know more than him? That's
Well,
what
yeah,
really
that-
struck
that's-
me.
It's typical of students, you know. It's just so typical of them. It's the same typical people who show up at these, or what I call pro-Hamas rallies in London. They don't know about what they're talking about. Half of them couldn't even point out where Palestine is on a map. Frankly, I mean, they are clowns. They're going with what makes me look best on the day. How can I get the most social credit points from my peers? Am I going to get some sort of clip out of this from my student newspaper? It's pathetic. It's uneducated. It's pathetic. And quite frankly, it's full of hate, Darren. He
Yeah,
hates
yeah.
the Jews. They hate the Israelis. And it's so abundantly clear to anybody that watches it. They are hateful people.
On a
I just quickly add something to
yes,
that
yes.
after you finish. So basically, you know, the head of the Oxford Union is an Egyptian, yeah? So my question to him is that why doesn't Egypt open their borders to free all the
Yeah,
Gazas?
yeah. That's a
Why is
good
it
point.
that Gaza and Egypt have a stronger border? There's a stronger border between Egypt and Gaza than there is between Gaza and Israel. So the Arabs don't want them.
Yeah.
You know, the Egyptians can free the Palestinians like that overnight if they open their borders. It's funny because they don't even want them as asylum seekers.
Yep.
The Jordanians do not want the Palestinians, so-called Palestinians from the West Bank. So I thought, and you know, Mossab Hassan Youssef makes a very valid point. He's like, there's no such thing as Palestine. It was the British mandate for Palestine between 1922 to 1948. It was a colonial mandate by the British Empire. And before that, it was the Ottoman Empire. And then before that, it was the Arab Caliphate. So there's actually no such thing as Palestine. At no point in history was there a Palestinian state. And that's just facts, you know, whereas Israel existed for 3,500 years.
Yeah, good point. Very good point.
Yeah.
And one of the comments says, Michael says, Chloe is our Christmas cracker while Darren is a dried date. I look like a husk.
Thank you, Michael.
Yes. Anyway, right. Next, then, moving swiftly on. I was struck by this actually the other day, and it's Sheffield, and it's a public building, and in there it's got
Palestinian flag. Wow.
that's a Palestinian flag flying on top, yeah, and it's got Merry Christmas below it, and you just sort of think that the juxtaposition between the two, it couldn't get more ironic if you tried. But this is because the council acquiesced to the demands of a union to fly the Palestinian flag. And I said, I don't think a foreign flag should be flying from a public building in Britain, certainly not one that it has such a history of terror.
Look at that building. Look at that building. It's a beautiful British building.
It
It's
is
beautiful.
Queen
It's made with
Victoria.
ancestors'
Darren,
bare
I thought when you
hands.
showed it that it was
And
the
these
asylum
people
seeker
just
hotel.
fuck off. I mean, sorry, excuse me for swearing, but these people should just fuck off. Just leave Britain. I would build a river around them, get some massive bloody ship or something, and ship them over to Gaza and leave them there and go, you wanted it, you got it, there you go. I will happily start paying it out of my own pocket. I will do 50 reason videos a day to pay for these people to get a flight to Israel and then walk over to the border and live there. How about that? Someone do a fundraiser.
They'll never do that, Alex.
I
They'll never
couldn't
do that.
agree
The
more.
majority of these
Of course they
pro-Palestinian mob, they were all born here. It's funny
I'm
because
so
people
sick
that
of
were
it.
actually
They
born
don't
in
want to be
Palestine
here.
or
They'd
born in
rather be in
Iran, they're actually
Palestine.
less extreme than the pro-Palestine, people here. I actually met a Palestinian guy the other day, like whilst I was out, and he was actually pro-Israel, and he was born in Palestine in West Bank. And it was such an interesting conversation. He's more into like music, but I was thinking maybe I should bring him on and interview him one time. He's a Palestinian that's pro-Israel. Why? It's because he saw it with his own eyes. Hamas hijacked the whole Palestinian movement, or hijacked Gaza, and now they sacrifice their own people. So the whole thing is a political entity, and you need to live under it for you to understand it.
Yeah, Stephen says, how is this allowed? It's an absolute disgrace. And I don't think it should be allowed. But the government are in complete acquiescence to these people.
Would they do that for the Israeli flag? That's my question. Let's say there was a pressure group for the Israelis. I don't think they'll ever do that for the Israeli
There'd be
flag.
people climbing the building with no ropes, like a shit Spider-Man, to pull the Israeli flag down. I promise you, they would be on it
in
like
fact,
rats.
Alex, they'd set fire to the fucking building just to get
They
the flag down.
They absolutely would.
So,
you're right. You're absolutely right.
You know, that I just look at that. Below that flag is a statue. When it zooms in, you'll see it on your screens. But there is a statue there, a little miniature statue of Queen Victoria. You can see her sat there. Below that flag. What a damning piece of filth to fly alongside one of the greatest monarchs to ever walk the earth. It's
an ugly flag as well. Let's keep it real.
It's an ugly flag, and it represents an ugly movement. There, I said it.
She'll be turning in her grave, Victoria.
She would. Well, she would. Well, she would actually say, "What the fuck's Palestine?" But right, okay. So Chloe already responded to this, but I thought it was really quite shocking, actually.
It's important to see, yes.
3, 2, 1.
So they're an activist group, Active Patriot.
I don't even know we're here.
And they're heading to this castle-like structure.
Welcome to the Madeley Court Hotel.
Madeley Court Hotel, and it looks like...
It's like a castle.
Well, he said it for me.
Need to back up as soon as possible. The YouTubers are here. Need to back up.
There's security.
Madeley Court Hotel in Telford. 16th century. What I would describe as a castle. This is your open borders immigration. Well, we have homeless dying in shop doorways and in tents. This is what we're giving to migrants. Take a look. This is what the migrants get. While your pensioner is scared to heat her home this Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah, worried about eating or eating. £5.3 billion a year. 4 million a day.
That's in asylum, yeah.
This is the open borders experiment. I just got past you, mate.
You are in private. I'm in private. Yeah, back up. Yeah, you need to back up.
Luxury.
Back up.
Luxury. We're just here to do a report, mate. We're not here to cause no harm. What you had in your face there? You got your SIA badge? Are you registered?
Yeah.
Oh yeah? What you had in your face for? 16th century, what I would call a castle. Gatehouse. Here's migrants here.
It is mind-blowing.
It is, isn't it?
Got their own basketball ring. Where are you from, my friend?
He doesn't look
Where
like
you from?
he's starving.
Georgia? Is there a war in Georgia? No English. Are you staying here?
They never speak
How
English,
long for?
do they?
How long you been here?
He knew what your name is, didn't he?
From Georgia? Is there a war in Georgia? Hey. If you want to jump on a boat from Georgia where there's not a war and be given a castle while our elderly are freezing in their homes and our homeless are dying in shop doorways, jump in a dinghy. Come on, join the open borders experiment. Come here for free and get everything because the taxpayer will pay it.
I mean, I shouldn't really laugh because it's deeply, deadly serious. But the fact of the matter is, right, this is going on across the piece. I mean, that could have been a bloody wedding venue at one point.
No, it is. I've been on their website looking. You can have a lovely
is.
wedding there, and their rooms inside, they look
Well, not
lovely.
anymore.
It's a beautiful place. I just want to pick up on the fact, though, that he mentions in this video that this hotel is in Telford. What happened in Telford?
Yes.
Well, all the grooming gang problems, right? And here in Telford, and the same in Rotherham, where they opened up, I think, about 8 migrant hotels, without consulting the community, as you can imagine, right? How do you think you would feel if you are a young girl who is a victim of grooming gang abuse? You walk the streets scared of, dodgy men coming up to you at any moment because of the abuse you've suffered. And then the Home Office, without telling you, they dump hundreds of undocumented young male men, don't know who they are, a lot of them from countries which have quite backward views about women, just dump them in your community after everything that you've gone through. You feel like no one's been listening to you for years. You finally feel like, oh, they're starting to make some arrests and convictions about the grooming gangs. Maybe this is going to become a safer place to live. And then they do this to you. I mean, what a slap in the face.
Yeah, that's a very good point, actually. A public safety point is never taken into the equation. I mean, the Southport riots happened after the massacre of 3 beautiful little girls and the injuries of many more. And you look at all of these men coming through, and it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when the next atrocity happens. And they will have blood on their hands. And I just don't know where this ends up, because the ballot box is fundamentally broken. We vote time and again for border controls. Now, what we see is a complete open border. And I don't know where that anger is ultimately channeled before things get pretty nasty indeed. And I could actually go to prison for saying that, by the way. Chloe could go to prison for what she's just said, because yesterday I documented on Recent that someone has been banged up, pleaded guilty for saying that Muslims perpetrated the grooming gang atrocity that Chloe mentions. Now, for saying that, this former professional cage fighter or boxer or something like to that effect is in prison. And he's been there since August in custody. And I just don't know where this all ends, because everything that we are saying right now about this topic, about this fucking castle, could land us in the hot water, in the slammer.
It's insane. Darren, it's insane. It is absolutely madness that we have got to the point in this country where we can't. This is censorship, obviously, but to the extent the British public can no longer criticise one of the cornerstones of this government's political agenda, which is open borders. They are not stopping these people. They said they were going to shut these hotels down. And we, as the British public, should have a right to question, one, why are the hotels still open if you said you were going to get rid of them? 2, how many people are coming into the country? And 3, where are they coming from? These are absolutely normal questions for any human to ask. To censor yourself is a disgrace. And the political prisoners in this country are going to have a reckoning one day, because the British public will not stand for this forever. And they can't lock everybody up. They can't lock every single person up. They can't. They can't do it. They really can't. It'd be impossible for them to do it. So we need more people to speak up, because more people that speak up leads us to change. While they can lock up the vocal minority of people, they will do it. But when that stops, they'll have to change tact. And I'm still waiting for the day for the vast amount of British people to wake up.
Yeah, me too. I mean, Younes, do you think will there still be a country standing in 4.5 years' time when the next general election it has to be called?
Well, I'm not sure about that, but I feel like this Labour government will implode sooner rather than later. And I just find it extremely ironic that we can send billions and billions to Ukraine and also, support all these wars, but we can't protect our border. Because let's keep it real. Once the illegals arrive, it's almost impossible to deport them, because how are you going to find them? How are you going to all put them in a ship? And where are you going to deport them to? So the best strategy is to stop migrants from coming in the first place. And I just don't understand why the Royal Navy can't protect the border. And it's not that difficult a job, just to stop every single dinghy from coming in and just basically have a wall of ships that stop people from crossing over. And the estimates are millions of people have already crossed in the last 5 or 6 years, millions. And these people, obviously, not all of them are bad people, but fundamentally, when you can't look after your own people, then why are you spending billions? And I think it was 11 million pounds per day, not even 4 million pounds. We spent 11 million pounds per day to look after illegal migrants up and down the country, putting them in hotels. They get given free meals a day, and most of them get asylum anyway. And as Chloe said, in Telford, there was a grooming gangs, and we throw in prison people like Tommy Robinson that expose these gangs, right? So it's bad policy. It's really bad policy. As I said, like Saudi Arabia, Dubai, all these countries, they don't take migrants in. They don't take asylum seekers. So why are we taking them? Like, why do we have a dog in this fight? No, we don't.
No, it's all
We
deliberate.
don't have it at all. So I don't think UK, there was a time that UK needed to take migrants in after the World War. But now that ship has sailed. I feel like we need to look after our own now.
Stephen says this makes me seethe. Paul says shit like this makes me want to leave the United Kingdom, and that's a sentiment that's expressed so often at the moment from so many people. Wild in the Woods points out that he thought actually the countryside was racist. Clearly not, given that it's now a hotbed of migrants. And Victoria says this is intentional goading of the indigenous population. Stephen says, shocking, what the hell is going on? They really couldn't give a flying fig about our children, do they? By they, I mean our effing elites. And Stu says, they say they are going for growth by immigration, but it's actually gerrymandering for a bigger base. And then finally, Paul says, we managed to stop the Germans invading, but not the small boats. Now, finally then, because I'm conscious I've kept you all for some time, Sabrina Carpenter, everyone on their phones, whether you've got Spotify on your phone or whether you've got Apple Music, they all have sent out today their wrapped up end of year, what you've been listening to and all these other things. Now, one of the most popular artists on this year's wrapped up lists is a woman called Sabrina Carpenter. And Sabrina went to number one in this country, I think, a couple of times, maybe a few, but definitely two at least, earlier this year. And The Telegraph have posted a piece questioning whether or not her sexual lyrics and performances sit in jarring juxtaposition with her Lolita-inspired girlhood branding. She said, then the Telegraph asked, who is this for? Now, I've seen this on American channels as well, this question posed. And she's actually touring in the United Kingdom next year. So I wondered what the panel thought of this, actually, because there was one image in particular where people are particularly irate. I mean, there she is sat on Santa's knee. You know, is that particularly acceptable, appropriate? There she is dressed in... She's 26, by the way, so she's perfectly able to wear whatever the hell she wants, or sing about whatever the hell she wants. But I think actually it ought to be down to parents. If you don't want your kids to listen to those lyrics, then you need to actually police what they are listening to and streaming. But this is the Lolita image. So she references here Lolita from 1997, which is adapted from a novel, a controversial novel, about a man who had an inappropriate obsession with a 12-year-old girl. And that's her there strawed across this lawn with a soaking wet dress and mimicking the 12-year-old in this particular film from this controversial book. But anyway, where do we draw the line here? I mean, do you think if you had children, anyone on the panel, actually, Chloe, I'll start with you because you are a woman. If you had children, little girls, would you want them listening to Sabrina Carpenter, or would you draw the line here? I mean, where do we draw the line?
I mean, to be honest, I don't listen to her music. I haven't listened to the lyrics. I'm not exactly sure what lyrics they are referring to here. I mean, I'll make the side point that I'm not completely sure about what this Lolita thing is, but I mean, most pop stars are pretty, well, let's say they like to wear some pretty revealing clothing. You know, I guess it gets the likes, and the men give it lots of likes on Instagram and whatnot. And you know, the kind of stuff that pop stars will wear on stage. You know, they're basically naked, and a normal human being, woman walking down the street would never dress like that. You know, are people gonna, you know, it's not just her, you know, Dua Lipa, all of them, when they perform and whatnot, they're just wearing like basically little knickers and a bra on stage, and quite happily shaking their bums around. Should you ban all girls from looking at that? I mean, I think it's going to be hard to keep it away from them, but I think that as parents, you've got to, I mean, first of all, sort of, you know, regulating their social media usage so that they're not spending their entire time looking at, you know, girls with with perfect bodies and thinking that the way to be beautiful is to have you know, your ass and your tits hanging out all the time.
I mean,
but I don't think you're gonna. I don't think you're gonna keep them away from it. And I think when you're kids, when you listen to music, I think, to be honest, you don't really listen to or understand the lyrics. Like, you just so I mean like, so the vast majority of songs, they are about love, right?
Yes.
And you know, kids who are, you know,
with double entendre, as in double meanings. Not explicitly talking about sex acts and things like that, but for example, one of those tracks is called Bed Chem, and you know, a kid would be like, "What do you mean by bed chem?" But apparently, she mimes oral sex with a microphone during her tour. Like, children, there will be young people.
I mean, maybe that's. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I haven't seen this, and that obviously that does sound a bit far. But you know, there are plenty of songs which say, you know, they make a brief reference to sex or something that kids wouldn't really understand, and they're just like enjoying the music for the good beat or whatever, and it doesn't really cross their minds. That, you know, they're innocent kids who don't really realize. But yeah, it's hardcore. Obviously, I just think it's, if she, you know, you can't stop her from doing this stuff, but I just think that it's sad that there are a lot of women that think that, you know, being really overly sexual and basically being naked online is what makes you a valuable human being. And sure, it may make you valuable to the kind of the sex pest men that just want your body, but kind of, you know, if your future husband and your future kids are gonna see that stuff, your mum's gonna see that stuff. I mean, for God's sake. I mean, I think it's pretty, you know, in those people's eyes, I don't think it's going to be very valuable to them.
Yeah, well, one of the views that the Telegraph platform here says, are from X, a young woman basically doing live porn in front of little kids. It's paedophile pop. But then Michael in our comments says, come on, Darren, the Pussycat Dolls were worse than this. So, you know, this obviously has been going on for some time. But the particular reference to Lolita, is that where we ought to actually draw the line? Because she clearly, the Lolita from, I haven't read the book, but she was clearly a damaged girl, and the Sabrina twist on it is to say, don't worry, I'm old enough. You know, is that sinister? Or is it brings in a whole host of ethical questions, I think. But I mean, I'm assuming, Younes, you think she's all right, pretty.
Yeah, but the thing is, look, in our culture now, we have a OnlyFans culture, and we have, you know, we had artists like Cardi B and all these people that have normalized sort of this, you know, extreme sexuality. And, you know, these kids, they listen to these musics, they go on YouTube, they're allowed to go on YouTube, and, you know, they play songs, and, you know, Megan Thee Stallion. And, you know, I was watching ITV Breakfast Show the other day, or this morning, and there was this woman that's on the breakfast show, and she slept with 1,000 men in one day.
But she's called Bonnie Blue.
In one day.
I
She
watched
broke
a
the record.
podcast.
I don't know what was her name.
Bonnie Blue is her name.
Yeah, Bonnie Blue. And I was thinking, why is this woman giving airtime, first of all? And
I
second
think
of
at
all,
this
why
point,
is she on the
Younes,
breakfast show where the kids can see this?
Exactly.
And she was talking about how she makes like 600 grand a month on OnlyFans. And she basically just goes, and this is another weird thing about it, she goes and courts like barely legal 18-year-olds from uni, like fresh as years, and sleep with them as soon as she meets them. And then she's like, as long as I can video this, you can sleep for me for free. And she slept with 1,000 people, and that's how she makes her money. And this is unfortunately the society we live in. These type of people are glorified. You know, these type of,
They basically say that the song fairy tale. What's it called? The fairy tale.
Of New York.
Of New York. That song, because it says the word faggot. You cheap lousy. Am I going to get banned from YouTube now? You cheap lousy faggot. It says that it's banned, but you are allowed to have Cardi B on the airwaves saying "my wet ass pussy," and then someone's just pointed out the song "My Neck, My Back, Lick My Pussy and My Crack." So,
Darren, can we just have a whole podcast of you reading out lyrics, please? It's highly
We could make a
entertaining.
bonus.
Can I step in for a second here?
yes.
Can I, because listen, I fight all day long with Puritanism that's happening in this country, with censorship, with people trying to shut us up for doing things and saying things. Listen, this has been going on for as long as we can remember. There's always been sexualization of celebrities. It's been obviously been progressing over the years. It's definitely probably at its peak because I don't know how many more clothes can come off at this point. But look, I don't see young girls and women walking around the street wearing that sort of stuff. Like, there's a difference between celebrityism, who's trying to catch your attention, trying to get a headline, as opposed to people who actually go out on the street. I haven't seen a single woman walking around wearing what Sabrina Carpenter's wearing in that picture there, for example.
Yeah, but I don't think
at
that's
all
even
anywhere.
that bad. I've seen far worse. I don't know
No,
why there's so
well,
much focus
quite.
on her.
Listen, we
Because
look,
she's just big at the minute.
I don't want a
Oh.
society that, you know, that starts saying women should wear what they want. Men, I mean, look, Sam Smith dances around on stage like a whale, and he's wearing less than her, frankly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, he's like a whale that's been caught in a fishing net, and he looks worse than her. I'd
Whale in
rather
a
see her
condom.
walking around. I would
Yeah.
rather see her any day over Sam Smith's fat ass walking around on that stage. I'll tell you that for sure. So listen, I think we should just let people do what they want to do. To a certain extent, obviously. I mean, it's not that whole Telegraph. Was it? Did you say it was the New York Times or somebody who said it was paedophilia or something? Come on, like, let's get a grip here. It's not. It's not right. And yes, I appreciate there's some references to a movie made here. I haven't watched the movie, so I can't comment. But I think we need to put things in
I
perspective.
wouldn't
and
want
just
to
let these
watch the
people
movie,
be.
to be honest. I find
No,
that
neither
sort of
would
thing
I.
really, really quite creepy.
Yeah, I'm not into pedo movies personally.
But that's where I would that's where I would get uncomfortable. That's I'm very pleased, Alex. Thank you very much. And that was our safeguarding lesson over. And the only sort of cringe moment I had was with that Lolita reference when I read about that and that particular book. But I like Sabrina, and for full disclosure, I am taking my brother's fiance to see her next year. So I will be and sort of endorsing, I guess, through hard-earned cash, her act. But I do also think that you just need to have a little bit of what we used to call parenting and stop your kids from listening to inappropriate content. It's just that simple.
I wanted to buy an Eminem CD when I was a kid because I mean, you know, I was what, 14 years old. Eminem was huge at the time, and my mum would literally found the CD and threw it in the bin, and it cost me like 10 quid, which was a lot of money for me when you were 14 years old.
Yeah.
It's a lot of paper rounds. Like, that's what parenting's all about. If you don't like what you're seeing, and vote with your feet, and then these celebrities will stop dressing like this. This is what free market capitalism does. It means people are rejecting you, and therefore, if people are buying it and watching it en masse, then sorry, that's that. Simple as that.
Yeah.
Stop them from watching it.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess you would even go back to the fact of the matter is you can go all the way back to Marilyn Monroe and the sort of sexualization of her. I mean, there are
Exactly. It's nothing new. It's nothing new. Like, I'm not surprised by this at all. It's nothing new.
JFK had a great time with Marilyn Monroe.
David says Sabrina's show is not for kids, adults only. So I don't know what the age limit is then. How old you are? I thought you could take teenagers to see it. But this has been going properly viral. I've seen it on American networks.
But then maybe the fact that, you know, I just looked her up on Google. She's like 152 centimeters, which is like, you know.
No, guys, have you seen her next to Taylor Swift? It's hilarious. So she's got at a concert, they're singing together, and she's got huge platform heels, like she's got in that picture there.
Yeah.
And Taylor Swift has like a flat little heel that's only like this tour, right? And the caption was, "Oh, I thought that Taylor Swift had invited a child fan on stage to join her, but it was actually Sabrina."
Yeah.
The
She's
height
tiny.
difference is insane.
She's
I
tiny.
mean, no wonder
Maybe-
Taylor Swift is a
just for the
single cat
audience
lady.
Yeah,
to
maybe
knowledge.
that's
Probably not a
why
single
they
man
connect
that's
her to
taller
kid,
than
because
her
she's
on this
child
planet.
sized, you know.
Alex, go on. What was the?
Yeah. So the Sabrina Carpenter tour, if your kids want to go, this is quite a weird age to choose, but anyone aged 14 or under must be accompanied by an adult aged 18 or over. So it's a bit of a weird age, 14. Like, I think it should be under the age of 16, but that's how it is. There you go.
Well,
so if your parents,
yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
are under
I
the
mean,
age
at
of
that
14, your
age,
mum's gotta go.
you should be. Well, I was going to. This is very controversial. I'm going to get cancelled for saying this, but you should at least be aware of sex. But I don't mean having it, to be clear. But you should be aware of what happens, because unfortunately we do live in an age in which you do things before you're supposed to.
And Michael's got a good point in the comments here. Careful what you wish for. You'll be in Islamic dress. That's exactly
true.
my point.
Exactly. At least, yeah, better to have freedom than not to have it.
Well. Yeah, I mean, Chloe has bought herself actually a lovely burqa that she's
Santa
going to
one.
wear.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, for Christmas.
Christmas
My
burqa.
religious dress.
All right. Well, on that Sabrina Carpenter note, by the way, who was on all of your top artists of the year?
How do you check? How do you
it
check?
should
I
just-
hate this. Everyone stop doing the stupid Spotify rap thing. I have to
don't
turn
have
off
Spotify.
Instagram for
No,
like the
but
whole
how
of
do
this
we use
November
Spotify then?
because I'm
I use
fed
Apple
up
Music.
of everyone's story being, "Oh, here's my Spotify Wrapped." I don't give a shit who you're
Yeah.
listening to. I just got electrocuted in my ear by my headphone.
Mine is very
Yeah, I
embarrassing.
don't. I have Apple Music, so yeah.
Yeah,
I
sounds
don't
cool.
get around.
You
I
do
have
get it. You
both.
do get it. I've got it.
Where do I find it? Where
So,
is it?
No
one
one
is- I
cares.
don't
No
even
one
know
cares what
how
you're
to-
listening to except for you.
But
Nobody
basically,
gives
I
a
don't
Yeah,
even
fuck
that's
listen
true.
to
about
Eminem
anyone
anymore.
else to Spotify Wrapped.
I skip
Mine
all
is
his songs.
Lemar,
Join my top five.
Peugeot,
Guys, this
GG
is a waste of
Agostino.
time. Dead
So,
time.
guys,
Yeah.
my top 5 is Eminem, 50 Cent, 21 Savage, Central C, Kanye West. But I don't recall really listening to them that much, to be honest. I think they just come up on my playlist and I skip the. Yeah, where is it?
All
Pete
right.
and Baz for me. It's Pete and Baz.
Pete and Baz.
So what's the
Well,
kid-
Yeah,
Oh,
look up Pete and Baz. They'll
Pete and
give you a good
Baz.
time.
Mine's Ant and Dec. What were they called?
That's
PJ, and
Is it the
You look a
I'm
little
a
bit like,
Celebrity theme tune, Darren?
yeah.
You know, like, you look a little bit like, don't you think? Like you resemble them. Like if they
Yes,
put Ant and Dec together, if they had a child, it would look like you.
Exactly. I get told I look like
Yeah.
the love child of Ant and Dec. So
I
anyway,
actually don't know which one's which.
Ant
Yeah.
taller, Dec smaller.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
So you look like ants then.
Right. So we've got to do a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Wow,
Merry Christmas.
He didn't even say Merry Christmas, did he? The Grinch.
Did you see the very best edit? I'd like to play us out with this actually. The best edit that I think anyone has ever done in their lives. Don't worry, it's not Sabrina Carpenter. And it was this one.
Can you please join me
Yes.
when I say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yay! It worked. Can you?
Is that's going to get you locked? You're going to get banged up for that, Darren. It's like a terrorist attack on Downing Street.
Yeah, that's inciting violence. You're inspiring people to blow up
Oh,
number 10.
well,
That-
I mean-
we'll be all in the slammer tomorrow.
Let's be honest, if they want to put me away, I've probably given them a million reasons to put me away by now.
You know who Keir Starmer sounds like? I don't know if you've seen
Dalek?
Phone Jacker or Face Jacker.
Yes.
There's this character and I forgot his
Phone.
name.
Yeah.
No, Phone Jacker or Face Jacker. And then there's this guy. I need to find
Brian
his name.
Bedondi.
Where there was this character that like speaks exactly like Keir
It was
Starmer.
Brian
What's his name?
Bedondi. Brian
Yeah,
Bedondi.
Brian Bedondi. Yeah.
Brian
Exactly like him. I encourage everyone, go and look up Bedondi and compare it to Keir Starmer.
Gandhi? He sounds
No,
very
but-
different to that.
No, Bedondi. What's his name, Alex? Can you say his own name?
Brian Bedondi.
Brian Bedondi. Yeah, exactly.
You know,
Well,
Dom,
looking-
is that the Dom Jolly one?
No,
No,
it's
no,
the guy. No,
Bone Jack is
Google him.
actually he's played by Iranian actor that was born here, but the guy is Iranian actually, and he just has all these different characters. And one of the characters is a bit like Borat and Sacha Baron Cohen. So he basically plays different characters and goes and pranks people over the phone or in person. And there's this one character called Brian Bedondi, and people don't understand what he's saying, but he sounds exactly like Keir Starmer. So yeah, I encourage everyone to go and look him up. It's quite funny.
All right, guys.
Well, anyway, Merry Christmas. See you all in prison.
Yeah.
It's
Exactly.
going to be a Merry Christmas. But at least
Yeah.
we'll all be warm in there.
3 meals a day. What can you
Yeah.
possibly complain about? You probably
Yeah,
even get an
exactly. At least
Xbox
they're
or
warm.
something these days.
Yeah.
Right, okay, guys, thank you very much for your company as ever. And thank you very much to you at home for supporting the channel. We've been getting some super chats, so thank you very much for those. And we'll see you at the same time next week. And hopefully as a 4 and not as, well, an arrested 3 or whatever else. But good night, guys, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Where's the end plate?
Awkward.
5,
4, 3. Where's it gone to?
Darren, end the stream with God's sake. Put
Oh,
everyone out their
I
misery.
can't end the stream. Where's it?
That's
I've lost
all
it.
YouTube.